Welcome to Beyond the Front Door podcast with Lindee and Rhea at Peak Properties. We are real estate agents in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and we bring you stories that make you laugh, cry, cringe, and inform you. Come on in. We put the real in real estate.
Beautiful wife and I are taking the kids to Florida for spring break. I've never been to the Panhandle. I have children, so my Florida credentials are Orlando.
Sure.
Because that's what
Disney.
Disney. So you wouldn't go, but it's supposed to be of course it's going to be rainy.
I know. My son just came back from a bachelor party in Miami.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I don't know if it gets any better than that.
Yeah, no,
but
for
anyway, sure. I think it was rainy a little bit while he was there too.
Yeah, and it's fine because we're supposed to get a little snow here next week, so I guess rain might be better than snow. Well, this is what the phone said. Don't blame me.
So are you going to Pensacola or Destin? Or...
It's by Destin.
Okay.
It's 30 minutes from Destin, but it's called 30A.
A town called 30A?
That's the area. It's 30A.
Huh.
And apparently Russell Brand is there, and he was posting, and they said they think that he lives there, but he's all around the area.
Is that why you're going?
Yeah, bonus round.
He's like, we'll see if we see him.
Yeah, for sure.
I've been seeing some resorts on TikTok around Destin, and a long time ago, probably 20 plus years ago, I attended a conference in Destin, but they flew me into Pensacola. I had to have a cab ride to Destin,
sure.
Which looking back on, I think I was in my mid 20s, and that's not a short distance. I think it's maybe 50, 60 miles or something like that. Anyway,
we had to land in Panama City to get to where we're going.
Oh, you do? Okay.
That's where the closest direct flight.
Yeah.
That we're going, so I took that. But I'm excited.
The water there looks beautiful.
I can't go in the water.
Why?
So we vacation on beaches because I have a beautiful wife who loves beaches. I can swim, but the water hates me. I have run out of an oxygen tank scuba diving. I got bit by some weird barracuda thing. I got caught in a tide and pulled out in the water with weird dolphins. I got trapped in a cave with my son as we were trying to swim through and almost got drowned. I got him out.
Oh my gosh.
We come back out of this cave and and the boat's loading you to take you to the boat. And there's no men on that boat. And what I mean by that is there's me and my two young sons in the water, and they said the boat's full, and none of those men got out and treaded water. They just let me and my sons tread water.
Oh.
Well, they went back to the main boat. So then we're getting splashed into these rocks.
Oh.
So I put my little son on my chest, and my big son swims next to me. I swam 400 yards in ocean water, which I can't do because I don't swim. So
but when you're a dad, you
harder.
Do everything.
And so we get there, and I almost die, and the water hates me, and I think I might have been a whaler in a previous life. Because why would the water hate you? I must have done something really deplorable, like kill whales.
Sure.
And so the water's like, we're gonna get you eventually.
You just wait.
Yeah, just wait.
So you're like, I'll just stay out of it, and then that won't happen.
You know what it makes me think of? That movie, Failure to Launch, with Kate Hudson and Matthew McConaughey, and they say that he's not in sync with the nature, and so every time
he gets bit by dolphins and things
whatever.
that they're like, they don't bite, and they bite him.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah,
that's you.
I had melanoma, and so I don't like to go to the beach because my Danish people. I mean, I lived in caves for 40,000 years. That's why my eyes are blue and I'm fair. You know what I mean? I'm not built for this. But my beautiful wife loves the ocean, so we regularly go to the ocean. So that's what our thing is.
That makes sense. Happy wife, happy life.
It's for sure.
It's for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that is a great start to, we want to welcome you and invite all of our listeners to listen in and introduce you. You're Bryan Pedersen. Is that how you say it?
Or Pedersen.
Bryan Pedersen.
It's the Danish speech. So the Pedersens are generally, it's a Swedish thing, and the S-E-N makes us Danish. S-O-N are Swedish, and now you'll remember that for the rest of your life.
Yes, I absolutely will. Anyway, so I guess I'm wondering if you'll just start off and tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, your career journey, what got you to Cheyenne, your family. You've mentioned your beautiful wife.
Absolutely.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about you.
I was born and raised here in Cheyenne, and very grateful to have the
Okay.
opportunity to stay here. I went to the University of Wyoming, and just like a lot of my friends who went to college, a lot of them, you have to find a job, and a lot more jobs are available 100 miles south of here just by volume.
Sure.
And by good luck and help and things, I was able to stay here and work at Pedersen Investment Group. I started working right after college. I started working at RBC's corporate headquarters in Minneapolis. And it was that's where the back office runs and our trading desk and everything out there. And I stayed there for 2 years. And then as soon as I had an opportunity to come back, and I partnered with my father and came back, and I've been in business now 27 years.
Wow, congratulations.
And, yeah,
so finance from the beginning.
From the beginning.
Okay.
The job I had before that was actually I was a bouncer, because I worked at, if anybody is Laramie from the late 1900s, there was a bar named Sins. The late 1900s was a wild time. It was a wild time in America. You could ride in the back of pickups. The bar was called Sins in West Laramie, and they had fish bowls.
It wasn't there when I was there.
No, they closed. Now it's the guy who owns it. He decided he wanted to retire from having drunks in there, so now he kept his liquor license because he sells beer. But the rest of it's a fly fishing store. So in his retirement, he takes people on fly fishing guides, but he pays the bills because people buy 6-packs when they go fishing.
Sure, a one-stop shop.
One-stop shop.
That's nice.
My wife was also born and raised here, and then depending on who you're talking to, one of us went to the good high school and one went to the bad. I went to Central, she went to East. Depends on who you're talking to. Is your preference on where you went to, and then and then we have 2 birth sons. Here, and then we've adopted 2 kids from China, my daughter Rhea and my son Brant. And we have a big family. We don't live far from here, and 6 of us, and so just having the most fun I can with my family.
Yeah, it sounds that way. I have a question. So I had a friend quite a while back that adopted out of Africa. Oh, yeah. And I just remember her talking, and when you said China, it just made me think of it, that at the time, like, I don't know if it's adoption internationally in general or if it is Africa specific, but there would sometimes be like windows of time that you can adopt and then windows of time where you couldn't, or where the country would be like, 100%. Okay, we're stopping American adoptions right now, or whatever the case is. And then after a little while, then they reopen it back up. Is that how it is with China as well?
Currently, China is closed. Again, and you're right. They open and close all the time. My wife was actually, the Wyoming Children's Society is a very near and dear to our family, because that's where we've grown by 50% of our kids. And
through the Wyoming Children's Society is how you did this.
And their gala is in August, if you want to. To all the listeners out there who want to come and do some bidding.
Yes, make the plug.
But they do. But countries open and close, and China's a very interesting story. China shifted to the one-child policy because their population was growing too fast. And what you could have then is it's very interesting. China, there isn't really a social security system. What you do is you live with your oldest son when you retire. Yeah. And so if you have a daughter, it's really bad news, because let's pretend that you have a daughter and she is she's a finance guru. She's a private equity person. She's also the next Taylor Swift. She also has her own modeling page. So she's
got money.
All the things.
Yeah.
That actually goes to support her husband's family, because it's a patriarchal society, and you lost because you don't have anyone to take care of you. And obviously in that extreme, maybe she would, but it's all about the husband's side of the family. So what you do is they would, oftentimes there's terrible stories of mass infanticide, but also put the girls up for adoption. And when Sarah and I had 2 birth sons and we decided that we were going to grow our family, we thought, well, we've got 2 boys, we should have a girl.
Yes,
and then,
I understand.
And then that's why we were connected with Rhea. And then it's crazy. It's a 2-year process.
It is lengthy.
We started,
and you got to go out there a couple times, right?
In China was just once, but we were there for 21 days.
Right.
And so and we started to think about, we were filing paperwork before she was conceived. That's how far ahead of the game it is, which is a crazy thing to think about. And then you're there for 21 days. You land in Beijing, then you go to wherever the city that the child is. And interestingly enough, I've been to Wuhan, because Ian's from Wuhan. We knew about Wuhan.
You knew about it before.
Yeah, way before. I've been there. And
I've been there.
And it is by far one of the most filthy cities that you've ever been to, because what is communism very good at? Centralizing. So what they did is they took all their Detroits and crammed them into the middle of the country. Wuhan is a major manufacturing center. Okay. About 30 million people in and around the communities around there. And then what they do is they ship it down the Yangtze River. And then, so if you think about north, you got Beijing. South, you've got Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. And then on the east side, you've got Shanghai. And on the west, you've got Xi'an. So this is in the dead center. So if you manufacture here, you can ship to all 4 ports, all 4 places. But because it's so concentrated with pollution, you can look at the sun in the middle of the day, and these lights you have in your studio are brighter. It is awful. We didn't see any birds for the week that we were there. And then we go down, and then your next process is you go to Guangzhou to the U.S. consulate, and then you do the paperwork at the U.S. consulate, which is another week of things. And then we extended 1 day because when you travel, it's about setting up a plan. Do you know the reason that stormy Normandy was successful? Because of the planning and operation overlord.
Yeah,
and so,
true story.
And so I wanted to have everyone fresh in the morning, and not take this light, because I was flying with 3 children and my mother, because we brought the boys over to be part of the process.
Wow.
And so
that was
we
an
had
endeavor.
the snacks and all the things ready to go. And in order to, because we couldn't speak any Mandarin, so in order to prevent, and Rhea had just met us, and so she didn't. So she didn't like me because I don't look like anything or smell like anything she's ever seen. No, yeah. So there's that. You're getting through that, and then there's a language piece, because not only is she 2, where 2-year-olds have a tough time verbalizing what their issues are, but now you got a language thing, and so. I think I fed her 1 Cheerio at a time for a 17-hour flight to just stop any crying. Yeah, you go, Cheerio, and then just one at a time. And I staying awake the whole time, because now her timing's off, and of course she's not going to force herself to go to sleep knowing that we have a time change. And so that was a great trip across. Anyway.
So was she in an orphanage?
Brant was. She had a foster mother because she had a very severe cleft palate, and they
so the disability got her into a foster
they repaired it, and what we're inferring, and there's some things that'll come to this, is that they didn't want her to fall on it because it was a very loose repair on the front, and so she was a pretty weak walker, and I think she got carried a lot. You know what I mean? Like she could stand and kind of walk, but if you put her on the slightest slope, done. Like couldn't navigate that. So she was probably walking in a very confined area and being carried a lot. Yeah. And so that's what we think. And then we had to go through, she's had 8 operations here, and now it's all done because her adult face is fully formed. So also thank you to Dr. Bird, Dr. Kinchlow, and Dr. Nate Steele, who have all been part of reconstructing what is now a very beautiful mouth. Yes. But it takes time and a lot of input from a lot of really nice, great people who were part of that process. Experts. Yeah. And they were, and it's, but they had done the lip there, and I think we're inferring that that's what happened. But the other thing that is, you don't know, there's no way to put your child up for adoption in China. You have to be abandoned, and so there's a difference there in our 2 children. Rhea was adopted with her umbilical cord attached, so we're probably pretty close to her birthday.
Right.
Brant was born, and so we get this paperwork, and they said possible heart surgery on like the 4th page of our document.
They don't know.
Well, so what I did is I took him to Children's and had a scan.
Right.
So I do this CT scan, and there's a heart issue, and apparently that's 1 in 10 kids. Your top 2 ventricles are open to one another, and then the vast majority of kids it closes. Yeah. And a small number it needs to be surgically done. And
PFO?
So. That you would, that could be the thing. I think that's what it is.
It's a patent foramen ovale or something like that. So everybody has a hole in their heart when you're in utero because the fluid has to. Is this what you're referring to?
Yes, this is it.
And for most people, it closes up on its own.
Yes.
But some people it doesn't.
Yep.
So I actually have one, but it's super tiny. It's not worth repairing. Yes. Your son's must have been bigger.
That's what it looked like on the scan. Oh. So they said it looks like the heart surgery he had was to repair this particular thing.
Yes.
Because when you said possible heart surgery, what I'd like to do is know, are we going to deal with something when he's 20?
Yeah.
You're like, so we took him down. We took both of them down and did extensive tests at Children's to find out what are we looking at in the future, genetics exams, different things that we could do because we kind of know that I'm going to give my kids congenital heart disease and my wife is going to give them bad knees. Right. So we don't know with the other kids what are we coming to for that.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
But Brant then was abandoned at about 6 months, and in rural China, when you're born, you're not 0, you're 1. It's your first day. You're 1 year old. And so he then, so then he gets abandoned at a police station. You got to remember that China is basically it's basically like Trapped in the 1960s. Men don't change diapers. There's this value. So imagine these two male cops pick up this kid and go, "What do you think?" I don't know. 2? Yeah, seems like he's 2. And he's probably 5 months. So I had a bone scan done at Children's, and he's about 15 months younger than what his birth certificate says. So we enroll him in school and enroll him in sports with what is his appropriate developmental age, not what the birth certificate says.
Sure.
Because his birth certificate says he's 10 and he's in 3rd grade.
But he's really like 8 something.
And it's like nearly impossible to get your birth certificate changes. And I watched a documentary on that one girl, Natalia. I don't know if anyone's ever watched it. I think it's on Netflix. But same with her. They don't really know her history, and they check the growth plates and do stuff. But she was literally, they were treating her like an adult, and they were saying she was maybe like 8 years old. She was like a small person.
Yes. Well,
so they tried to get her birth certificate changed. It's kind of interesting.
I tried to go through that because I think that sports are important for kids because it's how you make friends at school. And
I agree.
My quick story, Brandon Booth is he's a public defender here in town. And in 1987, he saved my life because I walked up to him and said, "What do you do after school?" He said, "I play football." I said, "I love football." I didn't know what I was doing. If he would have said, "We're going to do drugs," I would say, "Well, let's go." Because in 1987, what I knew about drugs is that you made eggs afterwards, and it was just say no. Because some of you remember this is your brain on drugs.
Reagan.
Yeah, that's all I remember. But I would sure, let's go do that. So I'd have gone off with the kids and ruined my life. But instead, I played all these sports, even the sports I wasn't good at, and most of them I wasn't good at. But I was with people after school, and I think that connection is the most important thing that sports offer. So to enroll him in sports. A lot of sports require you to bring a birth certificate. Something like wrestling is really important because people fake ages for, weight and developmental things. So I was trying to change birth certificates specifically for school activities.
So it's accurate.
And we walked all the way down to the very, very end. They said, "You can do it, but here's the problem. It won't change in the Department of Immigration, and it won't change in China." And they said, "Are you ever going to take him back?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, do you want to deal with mismatched paperwork?" So so he'll have a U.S. passport that says this, and then his Chinese documentation still reads the other place. I don't want to sit in Beijing TSA or jail for a week.
Yeah, and you don't want him to never be able to go back there because it's like a whole thing.
Yes, it was meaningful for Rhea to go back when we went and got Brant and got Brant home.
Sure.
And so we'd like to have that opportunity again. But we're thinking like it's when maybe he is in college and Brant's close to high school. So because we all took a trip too young.
Yeah.
And you're like, I can only tell you I went, but I can't really tell you a lot about what. Yeah. And so something when they're a little bit older, and that they can then, be with their culture. It's something that's very important to us. And we've tried to do it in a lot of different ways. There's a unique festival that we throw every year, my family, for them too. We do a Lunar New Year festival.
Oh,
and we bring in 35 drummers, dancers, and acrobats from this 7-time national championship lion dancing team out of Boulder. And they drive up here, and they're all these kids to adults, and they do the lion dance team, and we do it on our Lunar New Year festival, and we bring friends, and then we also bring other adoptive families. And so it's kind of turned into an adoption celebration, because it was originally just us. And I said, we need to grow this more people. And we had friends, of course, of ours, and then little friends from their school, because it's also important that the kids at school understand their culture, because we don't have a vast Chinese population in Cheyenne. Right. So I'm actually quite confident, and I say this with sarcasm, but remember, all sarcasm is based on the truth. I think I throw the largest Lunar New Year party in Wyoming.
Sure, that's probably.
I would bet you do too.
we get like 130 people, and then all these dancers and stuff, and I don't think it happens anywhere else. But it's a wonderful piece, and we've been able to include a lot of people in the public, and we've had some news coverage, and why that's important is so that people know that this is something that we do in Cheyenne, and it's a big deal, and we really enjoy celebrating all of our backgrounds.
So I just have to say really quick, you can tell that Bryan, who was I having this conversation with? I think Tammy, my friend Tammy, a couple days ago. You clearly say yes to life, right?
Yes.
You just, if opportunity lands in your lap, whatever that looks like, or experiences, you're saying yes to that. And I just want to say that because the way that I met Bryan was at Gold's Gym, And every Friday I'm in there working out with Leanne. And
Yes.
who do you work out with?
Branko is my trainer.
Branko. I
Yeah,
never
yeah.
remember
Yeah,
his
yeah.
name. Anyway, Branko plays rave music. I think I don't know if I heard you. Have I talked to you about this? So he
Deep
plays
German
rave.
techno. It's wild.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And he's got it on the TV and it's a whole thing. But anyway, he's always telling stories every Friday when I go in there. There's always something. And you can just tell that you just open yourself up to life. And that's why I was
Absolutely.
really glad that you were able to come on and talk about, like he said, he goes, I could talk about 100 different things.
Yeah.
And I'll
Yeah.
bet you could.
No, this is my dream job. When I retire is I'm going to be an Uber driver, because then you're trapped in the car with me for
And you
15
just-
minutes. And you just
have
stop.
to listen.
And by the way, you can give me a 1-star rating and say this guy talks too much. It doesn't matter. You're trapped talking to me. That's what I want.
What we just need to do is put him down here with Grant and then lock the door and
Yeah.
let the
And it
cameras
just
take
goes.
care of themselves. My husband is a talker too.
Oh, yes,
so
of course.
It would be a hoot, I'm sure.
I like making fun of myself is my passion, and I will tell you part of the reason that it will take on just about anything is I say this again, sarcasm, is I've had 17 concussions. And so what happens is it damages the part of your brain that says danger, danger.
Impulse.
No, you just go. And so what it is a lot. Some of those are diagnosed, but some of it's looking back. You have to remember that I got my first 2 concussions, I believe, in 1992, playing high school football in the same game, because there was no concussion protocol.
Right.
And it wasn't actually until, fast forward, I served in the state legislature 2004 through 2012. 2010, I passed concussion protocol, because before that, what would happen is you just got hit in the head and the coach would make you sit down for 5 or 10 minutes because you got a dinger,
Yep.
and then you'd go back in the game.
Yes.
And you go back again to the late 1900s. You wouldn't wear a helmet on your bicycle. In 1986, if you
No.
went by if you
The
were
late
driving
1900s,
the late
let's not
1900s,
forget.
yeah. If you were coming by the front of my house on what was then Newton Drive, and you were wearing a helmet on your bike, I'd have thrown a rock at you. What are you doing? And
Yeah.
of course, now I wear a helmet to model good behavior for my kids. And then I did 11 years of MMA, and then I did one in snowboarding. And now everybody wears helmet, but there wasn't even a snowboarding or skiing helmet when
I
I did this.
know.
What were we going to do? Wear a motorcycle helmet and have that thing fog up on you? That
Well,
would be
and you'd be top
untenable.
heavy on
Yeah,
top
you'd be
of-
top heavy. And now, of course, we have all those items and we do all that stuff, but maybe that's why I'm eager to do all of it. Maybe I don't know it's a problem.
Well, we talk about it all the time because actually, and I think I mentioned to you that we love to have small businesses on to talk
Yes.
about their jump story, because we all get comfortable in whatever it is that we're doing, but yet there's this seed or idea or something kind of rolling around in our heads. And I think just about everybody we've interviewed that finally made the jump wish they'd have done it 2 years sooner. That seems to be the common time frame where they're like, God, I just wish I'd have done this sooner.
Yes.
But I'll bet you're jumping a lot quicker than 2 years out.
I have reinvented my business. I believe this will be my 4th iteration in 27 years, because if you're not growing, you're shrinking.
That's right.
The thing about my industry that is true is people age out. That's what actuaries say. And so what happens is your client passes away, and maybe their kid lives in Boise, and she has her college roommate does what I do, and they already have a relationship.
Right.
And so I'm with people during their lifetime, and your lifetime is finite. So if you're not constantly changing your business model to adapt to new opportunity, your business will shrink.
Yeah. What are you doing?
Yeah. No, but I've really enjoyed it. I enjoy working in Cheyenne. I think this is the greatest place. I laugh because we have such a beautiful day today.
And
But-
we're down, and we're inside.
Yes, and we're
in
inside.
this podcast.
But for the 2 weeks before this, it was awfully windy, and so
story.
the great thing about here is it's because the weather's so bad, we don't have homeless and a lot of crime, and so by being so unlivable, we become the most livable place on the planet, because
true.
there's not a lot of bad issues that come with some of these Southern California communities where it's much worse. And so here it's
Well,
wonderful.
it's nice year round, and
Yes.
yeah, we always ask everybody, I guess whether we're selling them houses or here on the podcast, but the wind is such a deterrent,
Yep.
but there's so many, we talk about it all the time. There's so many pros, and I joke all the time because the locals that have lived here forever feel like the traffic here in Cheyenne is just crazy. Like it's too much, but literally every other person that has moved here from somewhere else loves the traffic
Absolutely.
here, right? Like they're just happy about it, but traffic and wind seem to be the two things we end up talking
Oh
about.
no! Well, my wife works out at Saddle Ridge, and she used to work at Davis, and her commute time has nearly doubled. It's nearly 18 minutes to get to. And if you told someone from Denver, California, it doesn't matter that you're 18. Wow, you're so close to work.
Yeah.
What a blessing.
What a blessing.
You know, and because I live right downtown, and I work downtown, if I hit 2 lights, I'm going to hit my wheel. I'm so angry that.
Well, I think you got to tell Lindee. So Corey and Deb are who own Peak Properties, and Deb is Lindee's mom. So they're the ones that own this house. And so he was telling me when he first got here that he didn't connect that when he's walking that a little something happens every time.
So you walk by because we go. What we do is we go to Story.
And I cuss at her.
Oh yeah. So
I'm like, I don't care, B.
We go to Story Gym for the East Central campus, and we live right over. So I just walk. I don't want to park my car. So we're walking across. You are being watched, sir. You're being recorded. And I'm like, and I didn't connect because I'm like, man, this person must have someone who dislikes him who's always like writing on their thing. I thought it was a house when we first came.
Yeah,
out.
well, you walk past the garage.
When you're coming from that side, you're not aware that because you don't see the sign.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, they must be in an argument with a neighbor or something about this. I'd love to know what
well,
the beef
I'll tell
is.
you, they didn't want that security thing, and then we had a gentleman living down here, and his car got vandalized. And my husband's a police officer, so the other officer reached out to me knowing this was our office and was like, hey, I got this they slashed the tires. They got in the car and slashed like the seats.
Oh, jeez.
And I was like, they're like, do you have cameras? And I was like, no.
And then
then I was like, we should get cameras because they do. Cameras
Yeah.
are what solves the crimes.
Yes.
Like when something happens, you can have an alarm system, but by the time they get here, the person's gone.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a camera, that's your best chance of really catching people. So that's why we got it. I get annoyed because I pull up and it's like, you are being recorded. And I'm like, I know, bitch.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm
You
aware.
tell me that every time I come here.
Every day when I arrive at work, you tell me the same story.
I'm tired of being recorded.
Yeah, we had to shut off one of our alarms. We have cameras on all of them, but one of them, we have to remember to turn off the warning thing that you have ours as a beep so that you look at the camera so you get your face done. Well, when we're doing a significant amount of yard work, my sons will say, Dad, will you shut off the buzzer? Because you keep going by the thing and it just...
Well, it scares me half the time. I know it's there and you get out of the car and then it says it and you're like, okay. And somebody's, it's not someone coming up on me.
Yeah,
when it's dark out and you got to put stuff in put a sign away in the garage. Yeah, she talks to you.
Yeah.
It could probably be shut off, but maybe it deters people by being
like,
we're recording you.
It's
so
a deterrent.
Yeah.
And it's a deterrent and you're on a busy street and, it's one of the busiest streets in Cheyenne, I'm sure. Central Warren and of course Delrange, something that Pershing. This is one of them that's a feeder to it. So why not have it? Yeah.
Well, and there's a lot of people out walking around out here, especially during the summertime. I've noticed, like even when I park out, there's just random people walking around, and I just think I'm glad, I guess, that it's all up.
For sure.
So, what's the name of your wealth management company again?
Well, I got Pedersen Investment Group, and
Pedersen Investment Group.
Yep, and we've I'm actually under RBC's. Of course, but that's the Pedersen Investment Group is its own little entity in there now. And I was actually thinking about being on your show and talking to you about things because there are things that you should know about where our industries can help one another. And we talked about because in your industry, everybody knows what a 1031 is, right?
Right.
But when I talk to a lot of folks in real estate, and I talk to CPAs, and I talk to even estate planning attorneys, and I talk about what is a 1031-721. And I just want to tell you why you should know from 32,000 feet what this is. And you can drill down and ask, follow up with the tax attorney and follow up with CPA or call me and you can go over it. But almost every realtor I've ever spoken to has said, I wish I knew about this a couple years ago because a client said to him, I want to sell this commercial property, but I don't have anywhere to move it. Right. And so that's or another one is you get the frustration of of someone who let's say has a lot of ag, and ag people are land rich, and then the cash isn't flowing because cattle aren't paying what it was or and by the way this year they are, but in some years they're not, but they don't know where to move it, and this is an opportunity to solve that problem and help them with the taxes. And I'll just quickly go over with you because what do you think of it as an arrow in your quiver, and you have an opportunity to bring something forward to a client who comes with you with an issue and say, I know of a thing that we can maybe do, and maybe you don't do it, but at least you know about it. So in a normal 1031 exchange, you sell the property and then you move to another property, and then what happens is you don't have to pay capital gains and your basis moves across. Right. Simple enough. Great thing, keeps Americans invested in property, keeps things going, it's good for the economy. The problem comes in is when you don't have that secondary property to go to. So what people do is then you would then sell the property, and the property would go into a Delaware statutory trust, a DST. And in that trust, they've identified a couple of properties. Some of these organizations that build what is this 1031-721. And a lot of times they're multifamily, or maybe grocery store hub shopping centers. Data centers are another one that they like to do. And then what you do is you become part of that process. And then once you're there for 2 years, those properties are purchased into a REIT. And a REIT is a real estate investment trust. And what it does is then it owns, one that I'm thinking of, it has over $7 billion of properties. There's 160 in the portfolio. And the idea is that when the one in Tampa floods, 159 are paying you. And the entire time that you're doing this, so through in that process, so while you're in that 2-year DST phase, and you can't go directly to the REIT. The IRS says that's too sweet of a deal.
Sure.
we need to show that you made some effort to be in some other piece of property. So that's why they make you hold it for 2 years there. And then they pay you a dividend. And so you make 4.5%, 5% dividend.
Oh,
and then when you get into the big REIT, then the dividend goes up a little higher too. And it's nice. It's a nice piece to have. It's a good way to have a solution for clients and a way to transfer out. Now, I'll give you what are the downsides. I'm glad you asked. Once you're in that REIT, your 1031 is done. You cannot come out of that into a property
with that specific money.
With that money.
Okay.
Now, once it's in there, the nice thing is that it becomes shares. And so let's say you've got this $1 million property. So if you have $1 million property and then you need $50,000 for something, I don't know, your roof blew up. Well, you can't sell a corner of your
Right.
lot of your
Right.
commercial building. You can sell shares of the REIT. And the shares of the REIT then, now those have the cost basis originally, but 50,000's less than the $1 million. But when you die, your everyone who inherits it, your beneficiaries, get a stepped up cost basis. So now they can keep it, or they can dump it, they can diversify it, they can go buy a house of their own, they can continue to keep the dividend, whatever they want to do. But it's a one-way in because it's a really good deal. And what they don't want you to do is you come into the REIT and then you can come back out. And
Sure.
that's, so once it's in, it's in. So you got to think about it that this is for your maybe not for someone necessarily young unless it's a significant piece. Maybe someone in their 20s who has got a large piece of land that they purchased perfectly and they don't want to do it and they just want to retire. This could be for them. But you think about if you're 65 and you're done with tenants, toilets, and trash.
Right.
And you're like, I'm not going to fix any more boilers on Christmas.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the people who this works for, because now they don't have to maintain the property because they don't want to do it anymore because
No.
they've got 10 rentals and it's just become a burden for them at their age, not probably in the building phase, which I know you're helping people in their building phase, but this is a good exit strategy on the way out because there is no way to 1035 out or 1031 out once you're in. And that's it, but it's great in the age place. And then it's another thing to have in your quiver when someone says to you, I want to get rid of this, but I have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And at least
What
it
do I
has
do
a
with it?
conversation,
Yeah, I like that.
And if nothing else, you at least have a solution for someone.
Yeah, because what I envision happening is then they just don't sell that property or they hang on to it for longer than they should and they're unhappy about it or whatever the case is. But if they can get rid of it and, like you say, invest it, and then I'm assuming what you're also meaning is that if they, especially if you're older doing it, then your children or your grandchildren can benefit even more so from that.
Yeah, then they can continue.
Circumstance.
And I started to think, so I have someone that I'm trying. I have a ranch. There's two that I have right now. They're both rural, and I have a ranch right now where she has, because she inherited it. So it was multiple brothers owned this farm, and then they have different cost basis based on when you inherited your piece of the ranch. So she's got 10 different cost bases on this ranch. So some of the cost basis is almost zero because recently a family member passed away, but she's got some older cost bases that are set. But she doesn't want a ranch. That's not what she's doing.
Right.
So for her, that doesn't work. But also I have another piece that's a significantly large ranch. I mean, you approach, you can have a conversation where you're in not just 7-digit, but 8-digit ranch range. And let's say you got 3 to 5 kids and you want out, but none of the kids want a ranch and none of the kids can come up with that kind of money. I mean, to buy out your brother sister, because now you've leveraged the whole thing. And so now you've got yourself into that trap of you're just paying these unreasonable interest prices and you're trying to do the ranch thing, but now you're making that little amount of money again. That's another opportunity where you can help people get out, and then the parents can get out, they can get their dividend, and then the kids will inherit the whole thing, and then they can choose to continue or sell and go do something else. But it's a pretty slick tool. And what's crazy is the number of folks that I've talked to about it
that don't know.
I just had a friend sell a business. I told him about it. I told his CPA. CPA goes, I haven't never done that before. He owes taxes on his building. Because they didn't execute this, and they could have just executed it and received some income from it. So it's not as known. And now, mind you, it's only become popular in really 7 to 10 years. There was versions of it before, but really the popularity spike came about 2018-19 when you start to really see it utilized. And then you have these significantly large products where they have a multi-billion-dollar portfolio to get into, because there's only a handful of players in the game, and now they're big players, and players who have built massive REITs before, who are now allowing this as an entry point in.
I wonder. It seems like I see a lot of articles about like boomers right now aren't really selling their houses, or they're slow to sell their house if whatever the case is. But as we get into the next 20 years, I suppose, my guess is that there's going to be a little bit more of that happening because people are going to be inheriting homes, or the boomers are going to finally sell their homes, and also the boomers hold the greatest portion of wealth. Am I correct?
I've heard the number of, so when you have these boomers who have investment properties,
yes,
the number's like $2 trillion is coming to the table for your industry over the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
This is $2 trillion rolling in front of you guys that someone will have to address this investment property with. Yeah. And a lot of it is, again, I don't want, because now I'm 78 and even less I want tenants, trash, and toilets.
Yeah.
And that's how you can help these people address that issue. And it's one that I have some experience with and just enough expertise to get it done properly. but what the most important thing is, and I should put this in because this is extremely important.
Okay.
You can't touch the money. It's got to go to a qualified intermediary. So if you sell the property and you touch the check, deal's off. Because in a different 1031, you have some time to select your property. Oh. This has to go, and this is the most important part.
Straight from the title company.
Straight from title to a qualified intermediary. Oh. And so you have to identify this process early, because it's that good of a deal for the taxpayer that the IRS is real careful about how they let people do this. And so you've got to involve that qualified intermediary early, and it's important that I mention that so that someone listening doesn't think, well, I've sold it, now can I do it? Did you touch the check? The answer is no. The title company's got to go direct to the qualified intermediary, and then that qualified intermediary works with the investment company to identify those pieces. That's a very important step.
That is a very
glad I just remembered on there so that we didn't spoil it. It's a big part, because the money has to stay in that they can audit the transfer all the way through.
Sure. Yeah, there's a tracking mechanism there. That makes sense. Well, I guess that's really helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So what other services do you provide? If you want to give us kind of a general
overview.
For
sure. I do. I run 401ks for companies. I do a lot of wealth planning. We do a significant, I have meetings this afternoon, we do a significant amount of loans. RBC is a Royal Bank of Canada, and we do loans on equipment. We do loans on buildings, things like that. But my primary focus is, of course, wealth planning for families and individuals. But there's such an incredible amount of stuff that we can do. We have 1.9 trillion in AUM and 90,000 global employees. It's a big firm. So usually someone can say, "Do you do this?" and I can find someone.
Right.
Because
Someone here does.
'cause
Yeah.
in a big enough place, I can usually help anybody find something, and I enjoy helping people. That's something that I picked up from my mom. Is my mom is toxically nice, and she's legitimately nice. We call her Geneva, and we call her Switzerland. But like I remember one time I was going off about Bin Laden, and I was saying what a terrible thing, and my mom says, "Well, I bet his mother loved him," and I'm like.
Of course, you had to say something nice.
Had to do that. It's because always finding the nice folks to people.
Yes.
But her mentor for me was to enjoy helping people, and so oftentimes I it's not even maybe part of my business or my compensation, but I like to help people get somewhere, and we can at least find solutions for people, even if it's not for my personal benefit. I just you can direct people in ways that helps their life, and probably it'll help me later somehow. Yeah. Even if it doesn't work right now, it'll work someday.
What did your mom have a career, or did she?
She taught, and then a funny story is then when I was younger, she worked at LSO, the Legislative Service Organization at the Capitol, and so I actually my first time in the Capitol, I was 6 weeks old underneath her desk. And while she was filing stuff there, and my joke is that I wasn't actually elected. I was just there long enough. They assumed that I was
worked there.
Yeah, and they're like, "Well, let's give this guy a desk and we'll get him out there on the floor." And it's part of the reason I ran for the state legislatures, because we're all living a very myopic life, and you only do what your parents. You don't figure out how weird your household is until you're 19 and you're out and you're like in college and maybe talking to your friends.
Meeting
like,
other people.
and you're like, your dad didn't do that, and then it's just
And then you're like,
one
oh,
does.
that wasn't normal.
Yeah, that wasn't normal. So everyone who came to our house when I was younger was involved in politics. And so, like, my mom helped run Dick Cheney's campaign early on in Laramie County. She ran Max Maxfield's campaign. She did a lot for Al Simpson. And so, and when I was 9, my mom drugged me up to the RNC, the state RNC, put me in an elephant costume, and I'm, moving behind the Cheneys, and I didn't realize that
You're the mascot.
Yeah, that's really weird.
Sounds to me like your mom was actually very open to opportunity.
Yeah,
as
for
well.
sure. Yeah, she was, and my parents were always involved. So when I was 29, I ran for the state legislature because I thought everyone just did that, because everyone I'd ever met in my life.
So you ran when you were 29.
Yeah, it was.
You got in at 29.
At 29, and I was the first time in 30 years that someone under 30 was elected was that year, because the prior person was Cynthia Lemus.
Yeah.
And and then there was a gap, and now there's been several that were under 30. Dan Zwanitzer was in for a long time, and he was elected the same year as me, but they announced me first. So
well, there's a few of those Swanitzers out there.
Yeah,
politics,
it was. Yeah, for sure. They've been in there for a while, but they that was my introduction, and again, I thought that's just what everyone did, and it turns out it's not that way. But I'm certainly grateful for the opportunity to have served. And
which part was your favorite? Like, what did you find you were passionate about?
I loved the budgeting.
Okay.
So it was in my third year I got to be,
Which makes sense.
Yeah, I got
the money guy.
I got to be in, vice chair of appropriations in my third year, and I was having a great time. Because I felt that there was a lot of arguing about things that didn't matter, because I think that the state legislature exists to fund pieces. So I really dove into the budget, and we're creating infrastructure in schools and things. And I did a lot of moving stuff into Laramie County, moving stuff into our hospital. I did a lot in that position, in that role, to do that, and try and help fund our schools. Actually, I'm the person to blame for a rivalry in our city.
Oh no!
This is a good story, though.
Between Cheyenne and East.
Between East and Central.
Oh,
well, really, and really is now South, because what happened was I had written a piece in committee to rebuild what was Okie Blanchard Stadium, and so because Okie was a shared stadium between both East and Central. Both schools played basketball at Story, and both schools did football at Okie. And so I had this like $1.4 million appropriation because it was a community football field. Oh. And then we built another high school, and then everybody said they didn't want to share fields. And then it looks like East was the favored school. And it's all because, and so I apologize to everybody
You
who's
were the dirty scoundrel
it was
that
my
did this.
fault, but at the time that wasn't the purpose. The purpose was to create that, because that's a field that looks like a junior college, or even a D2 school, but it was because it was supposed to showcase Cheyenne. And it wasn't there to be a specific school. It was actually a rebuild for a shared, because for the history of Oakey Blanchard Stadium, both schools played there. Central didn't play at Risky Field at all. And so it was that's a funny part of my journey. The other one so I did a lot of work on appropriations, but the ones that people care about is direct wine shipped to your house. And I created the MMA commission.
I remember that.
That's right. You did.
No one cares about like rewriting the retirement plan bill or doing this. Because what is that? And they say, "Oh, you're the MMA guy." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I actually did a lot of good work up there." But sure, that's one too. But that's one that we did not have an MMA commission. We didn't have a boxing commission when we created it. It was just happening, but it was unsanctioned.
In Cheyenne or in the state?
In the state.
Okay.
It didn't exist.
It was Fight Club.
Yeah, you could.
Nobody talked about it.
No one was. It wasn't illegal, but it just wasn't sanctioned.
There was no
Right, there
rules.
was no
Is that what you
regulation.
mean?
No regulation. Well, here's what happens. You have the rules, but if you fight in an unregulated state, it doesn't count towards your record because they can't verify that you checked all the boxes. And in fact, you can lose your license in a regulated state. And so at the time, MMA was running to regulation because this is 2012. Remember, the UFC was not wasn't legal in every state, and so they were looking for states to get more states on and more states on. And so we actually became the very first MMA only commission because at the time boxing did not want to be regulated, and so we just MMA and kickboxing, and then we moved down the road, and bare knuckle boxing came to us. Now we had 37 events unregulated for bare knuckle because they said we don't want to be regulated. And then another promotion says we do want to be regulated. And I said, okay, well, we can figure out how to do that. Mm-hmm. And so we're the only regulatory body that regulates industries that have asked to be regulated. Think because no one else has asked for regulation. It was forced upon them, right?
Right.
And so so we were the first place in the United States, in the world, to regulate bare knuckle boxing and sanction it by law.
Wyoming does the weirdest things as the first go
we're the
around.
first go around. First state to also have all female bare knuckle fight, because when they did it, I said you better make sure that you have some female on there because we're the equality state. So don't do that. Yeah, and we had a great Beck Rollins won that first one. It was a terrific fight, and she went on to have some notoriety in the sport after that. And we've had and then since then boxing has folded in. Who wanted out, they've actually now asked to be regulated too. And so we won't regulate something that doesn't want the regulation. We're just here that if you want to, because you want your match to matter somewhere else.
Places.
Yeah. Then we're here to help.
So at the same time you're doing this, you're also doing concussion protocol.
Yes.
As well. I'm like swirling all this together in my head.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just taking on everything.
I'm actually glad that you did do that because I think, wasn't it right about that with the concussion protocol? It was right about the time that the movie Concussion came out with Will Smith, right? Yeah. And it brought about, and I just remember because it was right about that time, both of my sons were in junior high football at the time. Yep. But my boys were late bloomers. Mm-hmm. So they were small.
Oh, yes.
And we're heading into 7th grade. And I've got this visual of my youngest son, Jaden, where you wouldn't know it now. He's 6'2" now. But at the time, he was the smallest, littlest person on the 7th grade football team. And they had him playing second string quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
Up against linemen who were not late bloomers.
Yeah, right.
Were big boys. And all I can remember is they put my son in as quarterback. And you can't even see him because all these big guys are crashing down on him. And you see this ball attempt to fly into the air, right?
Right.
And he got screened for concussion that game.
Yeah.
And it happened a couple of times. And I watched that movie and my poor sons, I was like, I'm pulling you.
Yeah, no,
we're not
it's
doing
very
football
real.
Anymore. Yeah.
My sons are kickers and punters for that purpose.
Yes.
Because
that's good.
You have one of the most important things that football gives you is 60 friends on the first day of school.
Yes.
Because you've been doing 2-a-day practices all summer.
Yeah, suffering.
And so you're suffering. And so you wave, you see Tom, Bill, and everybody, you waving at each other in the hallway, and you have that community piece that I brought up earlier. That's what sports are for. Mm-hmm. And so they get to have that, and then get to be part of a team that does something. But if they have a concussion, there's been a play that went wrong.
Yes.
And someone gets a
And
flag.
someone's in trouble.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I really appreciate that even the NFL is doing all the things
Yeah.
that they can to make changes to it. My boys all played soccer, which there's still concussion risk in soccer. And I just...
More in soccer than there is in football because of headers.
Well, and so I told my boys, and the coach, I'm sure, was never happy with me, but I'm always like, headers aren't necessary when it's 10 below outside.
Right.
Like, let's not... all you're doing is hitting a rock
Yes.
that's coming at you when it's so cold outside. If it's summer, spring, fall soccer especially, I feel like is pretty much okay. Like if they're doing headers or whatever. But when you're in March, the balls are really cold.
Yes.
And so I would tell my sons, I'm like, if you feel like you absolutely have to do a header, I mean, I get it. Your coach is yelling at you from the sidelines, but if you can find a different way, please do, because.
Well, they don't even allow youth soccer to do headers.
And,
Youth soccer.
Youth soccer.
Right.
And I can't remember at what age. It's somewhere between 10 and 12 you're allowed to start doing it.
Yes.
Just because
Yes.
if done correctly, there's less of an issue. It's not a zero.
Right.
But you can't figure out how to do it when you're too little.
Yeah.
No.
And so there's a lot of research that doesn't even allow it to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
But I'm glad you did that. And
Yeah.
I'm glad the country is moving towards, I mean, my husband has said, flag football is never going to be a thing.
Right.
That's not something that's coming down.
doesn't simulate war.
No.
And we that's
need
what
war.
we're here is to
Yeah.
simulate war,
Yeah.
battle, and
Yes.
injury, and being carried off together and being
Yes.
part of something. This is, that's the
That's a great
purpose
way
that
of
it was.
putting
That's
Yes.
why we're so passionate about it.
Right.
Yeah.
But the NFL has made some good strides
Great strides.
in attempting to fix that.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's a good model piece, and hopefully it works down the line. And I think that I'm grateful my kids didn't. They both. Brock, my oldest, had a couple concussions from other things, but none of it from kicking footballs.
right. Right.
He got it in soccer of all things,
Yes.
and wasn't taking a header. It was other running in other players and things, because you're still bodies running into bodies,
That's true.
and you're still at high speed, and so there's still those opportunities. But and then you get them, like I said, you can get them on a bicycle.
That's true.
So there's all those ways that they're out there. So, but it is you just need a way to
Or a
address
car
it.
accident. My son got one in a car accident, hitting his head on the window.
Yes.
And the airbags all went off, and
And
so,
still,
yeah.
yeah.
As it turns out, your brain doesn't. It's not good for it to bounce around inside your skull.
No, for sure. And you don't realize also everyone you get, it's easier to get it the next time because now you're looser inside there. The membrane that holds it has now been torn, and so it moves
A little
easier.
stretchier.
Yep. So I'm pretty much to the point if I lay my head down hard enough on a pillow. I
Like
wish
that
I'd go to
one.
sleep that easy. Remember going to sleep easy? That was a fun time, when you could just go to sleep, not think about your mortgage and all the things
All
that
the
you have in your life.
adulting.
You're
Yeah.
adulting, like, I should probably think about that. Your kid goes to sleep like they've had too much alcohol and and you have to carry your kid out
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
And you can't. That's a good sleep.
Yeah. You're like, remember this?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. And I would imagine we would love to have you back sometime.
Absolutely.
You've got lots of stories to
I can
share.
listen. I just was listening to the one we did with the Westby.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's that's a fun restaurant. I really enjoy it. They're great people. That's especially, and that turf they put out there is awesome. And
Yes.
set up a tailgate out there would be a lot of fun. And I like their pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had their pizza. We had our 1-year anniversary party there.
Oh yeah.
For the podcast, and we had their pizza.
Yeah.
And it went quick. I think it was the main thing that
Yeah.
got eaten.
It's simple and it's fun and it's clean and they're great people and I enjoyed that podcast anyway.
Good,
Yeah.
good. So when we very first started the podcast, we had people telling us we should have them on just because of the level of sacrifice that they engaged in to build that, like selling their dream home and living on their kids' couches and then eventually building an apartment over there above the Westbys. And then just even sitting and listening to him talk about they worked all day and then would be there in the evenings to work on the interior of the building
Yes.
and do all the things. And I think, and I said this during the podcast, is that I think sometimes when you give up everything that you've been working for to pursue something else, it feels like a step backwards.
Yes.
It feels like you're losing
Yes.
instead of gaining. And I think that's why it's so hard to do. When you think if you have you know, you build a career and you've purchased a house and you've got investment properties, let's say, but you've got this really big dream over here and you're going to sell that house that you've been investing in for the last 10, 20 years and give it up to go pursue this. It feels like you're taking a step backwards or you're starting all over again. And the
impatience of it coming, it's like, I always have to remind myself that water doesn't boil when you first turn on the heat.
Right. That's a good phrase.
The heat is on, and it's on full.
Yes.
And I can put my finger in the water and it's still cold because I just filled it out of the thing, and I'm like, I'm doing the stuff.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, as it comes in, and then the bubbles start, and then all of a sudden it's bubbling and it's going, and it's just a fast bubble piece that's coming through, and it paid off. Yeah. But that impatience of we want it now. Yeah. And I tell you who I blame for all this. It's Sam Walton. See, Sam Walton, he made everything fast, cheap, and easy. So in the late 1900s, when your phone broke, because you only had two, you had one in the kitchen and then you had one downstairs, and then you'd have to go around the corner. A guy came and fixed it. Well, now you just throw it away and you go get a new one. And so Sam Walton made everything fast, cheap, and easy. Yeah. And so what we want is everything. We want our wars fast, cheap, and easy. We want our marriages fast, cheap, and easy. And we want our path to success fast, cheap, and easy. And in fact, it isn't. Every one of those things we just talked about takes a wild amount of work to have successful and keep on the reins. But that model of fast, cheap, and easy, we've adopted into every part of our society. And it's so hard in a business to take a right turn when you know that it's over there, but it won't happen right away. Yep. You know, that water's got to start boiling.
So you and I talked about this a long time ago, I think, when I first met you, and we talk about it all the time here on the podcast, and I know we're starting to run tight on time, but this is why it's so important to have a mentor.
Yes.
Because the mentor can say, okay, I've been down this road. This is what's going to happen in probably the first 6 months to a year. This is what's going to happen years 2 through 5. You know, you hang in there.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like when we go to the gym and we have a trainer.
Yes.
Right. And they're like,
I wrote it in 2019, pre-pandemic. I went up to the Poconos and hired a writer, and to help me write a thing. And you for those
book?
No, better.
I'm like, wait a second.
Wait a second. A TED Talk.
Oh, nice.
And then what happened is I did that in 2019, and then in 2020 we had to go home for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And I bet you haven't seen a live TED Talk since. That died. That's done.
Yeah.
Now podcasts are here, but that TED Talk was a meaningful way to address ideas at the time, and I had about 11 minutes, and I won't do it now, but I'll give you the 4 rules and really speak to what you've done through.
Yeah.
The first one is to know your opponent, and so a lot of times you think that the opponent's across the way, but maybe the opponent is you. You know, know
Get out of your head.
Know the rules, because you can't function if you don't know the rules of the game. And so here you got to figure out what the good things and what the bad things are. But to speak to what you said is know that you can't do. Or sorry, I should probably do the first one first. No, there's no such thing as a first round knockout. The reason that first round knockouts make a highlight film is because they're rare. Most of the time, the fight is long, and then in the end, you get your hand raised and you're the winner. And it came to a decision, and it was all long, and that's changing a business. Is you want that first round knockout, but everybody who has a first round knockout's famous. The rest of the fights go the distance.
Yes, I called it the other day the exception versus the rule.
Oh, yes.
You have the rule is 95% of what everybody else is doing, and then you have the small little percentage of the exception.
Yes.
And everybody's aiming for the exception.
Yeah.
And most of us are the rule.
We just have to do the rule.
That's
right.
right.
And the last one is know that you can't do it alone.
Yeah.
I've hired a coach for everything I've ever done. I have a business coach. I have coaches for our trainers, you know. My wife and I have successfully used a marriage coach to try and, because that was a great story, because my wife and I were arguing too much, and what we figured out is, you remember know the rules? She was using the rules because remember the rule of 10,000 hours? If you do something, you can become an expert.
Yes.
My wife was an expert at fighting with her mother, right? Because she did 10,000 hours, and she was using those rules. And I was using the rules because I used to fight with my dad. And I was using those rules. Well, those aren't the way that my wife and I need to fight with each other. They're different people. So we had to figure out, how do we conflict, resolution together, which is different than the way that you've conflict resolution all the way up to your mid-20s. Your conflict resolution is with a totally different person.
Yes, and different dynamic.
Totally different dynamic.
Yeah.
And so that's why we had to change into, and that's know the rules, because the rules changed because we changed how we were doing it with each other, and we had to do that with an outside coach. And so I've even used the coach in my marriage, and our communication is wildly better now because we know the rules on how to engage each other.
Yes.
And so the misunderstandings are way less. Because you know what you're actually saying, and that's the same with all the way across. So if you can get a mentor, a coach, and anything in every aspect of life, because somebody's done it wrong before, and they're likely and they can tell you how not to do it wrong, not just how to do it right, but here's how not to do it wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and
that's what they usually say. I could tell you what not to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Please do.
Yes, tell me those.
But then too, I think it's a positive way of saying it, because let's say you're in your marriage and you're not fighting according to the rules.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe so we're calling it a life coach, mentor, whatever, to teach you how to do it. But in other circumstances, it could be somebody saying you should see a marriage counselor, you should see this. Well, it gives the connotation that something's wrong with what you're doing. There's something wrong with your marriage, or there's something wrong with your business, or there's something wrong. But it's just changing your mindset and your attitude
And
about
changing
it.
to you want to improve.
Yes.
Not there's something wrong. You just want to be better.
Yes, you just want to be better. So you get a mentor or a coach to make it better.
Yes.
Instead of that there's something wrong.
Yes.
You just have to frame it in your head differently.
Yeah.
You
Frame
know?
it towards getting the win, getting a hand raised at the end of the week. That's
Yeah.
what it is. Wrestling's one of the best sports because it's miserable the entire time. But if you do really well after all that practice and all that stuff, they'll raise your hand at the end of the week. That's it. And then you go back to the bottom again. You got to start grinding again. And that's more. That's a better. And wrestling's the best analogy for business because of the grind. And then you don't get your hand raised every week.
And then you get a win when you get one.
You get a
but
win
then
when you
keep
get one.
going.
And you got to go back to the grind and then do it
you don't
differently
just
than
stop
you did.
because 1 week your hand didn't get raised.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. Well, so if people want to contact you for wealth management, how can they find you?
You can Pedersen Investment Group.com.
Okay.
You can do Bryan Pedersen Cheyenne, and it'll bring it up. It'll pop up there. I like to go to Gold's Gym around 11 o'clock on Fridays, so we can you can pop in and see there in the back room and listen to some German techno.
The music.
I don't like that.
I was telling my son the other day, I said, I was in there a couple Fridays ago and they had some like head hurting music happening, right? And I walk in there and I'm not even in there 5 minutes, and I look over at his trainer and I'm like, what the hell music is this? And both of them start laughing and they're like, we were wondering how long it was going to take for somebody to comment on the music, and it had been like 40 minutes, right? But I had only been in there 5 minutes and I was like, I'm not working out this. We're changing this.
The other purpose is that it gives us less people in the back room.
Yes. They're trying to keep the riff.
That's a good idea.
And so
Keep
if
people
you're
out.
a chill enough person to like have the weird music playing and you're still to have a conversation, come on back. But if you're trying to force yourself on into that room and tell everybody, don't turn down your.
And then we're like, Rhea, you're showing your age. You
Yeah.
came back here. She's like, what is this?
Yeah, no, but by the way, it was weird. By design, we were going to see how long we could get before someone said
what's this music?
Yeah, because it was pretty sideways.
Yeah. It's funny,
funny.
And I can for the most part roll with any music that's back there.
Yeah.
But that particular day, I was like,
This is weird.
Yeah.
I need to say something. Anyway, okay, so to wrap this up, my question for you is, what is your favorite thing about Cheyenne?
Oh my! Well, my favorite thing about Cheyenne, because I don't think you can talk about Cheyenne without talking about Cheyenne Frontier Days. It's the best 10 days outside of Christmas. We do every rodeo, every night show, and every parade. The parade comes by our house, and we really enjoy it. But the reason I enjoy it is because of the community. It's 3,000 volunteers, and if you look, it's all the same people who are volunteering with you on all the other boards. Like everybody who's out here building a community is involved with that.
Yeah.
And that's really, and I think that's pretty rare, because I got some friends who live in some big cities, and they always call me and they say, how do I get involved with my board, or how do you join a board? And I say, number one, you're 40. Why didn't we have this conversation when you were 20? But they want to get involved in the community. But Cheyenne is a place where people are just involved in the community. And I use Frontier as the example. But that trickles into the United Way. That trickles into Boys and Girls Club, CASA, every Safe House. I can't say enough of them, but they're all put on by wonderful volunteers who care about this community. And I think that's unique, at least in my observation and speaking with people from other places. Our sense of volunteerism, which again, I didn't know that everybody didn't do, because my mom and dad were always involved in these fundraisers and stuff, and I thought that you just did that, and so I just did that, and that's a big thing that I think is pervasive in this community, that sense of volunteerism and taking care of other people, and I think that's my favorite thing about Cheyenne.
That's a great answer. I'm not sure if we've heard quite that answer before.
No,
have we?
that was great.
But you think about it, everybody's in the same boards,
Yeah,
you know,
just rotate
and we're
around
just
a
see
little
each
bit.
other all the time, raising money for good
No.
stuff, just like we're going to raise money for the Wyoming Children's Society again. As I say,
Here at the end of August,
here at the
right?
end of August,
Here
yeah,
in August.
Yeah. My question is real estate related.
Yes.
If money's no object,
yes.
you can buy real estate anywhere in the world. What would you buy and where?
Well, it'd be personal use, and the greatest investment that you can get for entertainment value only is the Powerball, and here's why. If I take my family of 6 to the movie theater, it's like $130 once we get in and we buy, and my kids are going to buy an egregious amount of snacks.
Yeah, that's
And
the
so
perk.
And I'm
Going to the
I'm
movies.
entertained for about 90 minutes, but for $2. By the way, I think the Powerball is like $500 million right now.
Yeah.
So I went and bought a ticket,
Yeah.
and for $2, I get to figure out how I'm going to spend $500 million for a week. Like 7 days of entertainment for $2.
7 days.
It's incredible. And what an investment.
And you think of all the ideas.
And I have actually a stretch of river near Riverside, close to Saratoga. That's what I would do, and then that's
right here
where,
in Wyoming.
yeah, I would Christmas there, and I would do all of the things, and because it's significant size, and so it's not something I could do right now because I don't have an extra, 30 million sitting behind me.
Right.
I'll just give it a few years.
Yeah, but if you bought that a big piece of land, then you've got somewhere that you have your own little version of Yellowstone with your family that you can have Christmas and cabins and things for people. That's what I would do. I mean, so my Powerball ticket. I won't tell anybody, but there'll be signs. I'll be in Saratoga a little more frequently, and we'll.
You have your own plane.
Give my own
to get
plane
you
to
there.
go there.
Flying all his friends into their own cabins.
Yeah. I said,
You can stay in cabin A. You can stay in cabin B.
my beautiful wife and I go there every summer, and we float the river with my father-in-law and my children, and it's a peaceful place.
Yeah, it
And
is.
I really enjoy it. And then there's and I can only use my phone for 45 minutes because there's only this one place where there's cell coverage. And so when we're on our way back, we stop for 45 minutes because I own my own business and I check all my emails.
Sure.
And then we go back. So it's the only place I have a breakaway, and it's truly peaceful, and that's what I would do. That's what I would do.
There's something about having no cell service that's relieving.
Yeah.
Maybe where you just are like, you can put a little thing on your email that says, I'm going to be out of cell service these dates, whatever.
I truly love my job because I get paid to make people's dreams come true, because their retirement is their dream. They're funding their child's wedding is their dream. Their college is their dream. But the only part of retirement that I look forward to is not being a slave to my email. This is a business owner. I mean, I love what I do, and really, that's what real estate does. Real estate makes people's dream come true. Your house matters. Like the primary thing that everyone purchases is a home. Now, you help people with plenty of commercial and rental properties, and that's important too for income and diversification. But where you raise your kids and where you have your Christmas and where you mark their head height over the years on the wall matters. And if you think about where you grew up, it is one of the most important buildings you'll ever be in. And getting paid to make people's dreams come true is wonderful. And that's a value of both of our professions, I think.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. I would say that for us, just exactly what you're saying, but the only second I would add is that we get to help share people's stories of what their dream was and how they made it happen. So we're having a blast doing that.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me on. This is a ball.
Yeah, it was absolutely fun. We got to do it again.
For sure.
Yeah. Anyway, for all of you listeners, as you know, Lindee and I are realtors here at Peak Properties. So if you're looking to buy or sell, we'd love to help you with that. You can find us at www.sellcheyenne.com, all of our social media channels, and of course, Beyond the Front Door podcast on YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Alexa. And we hope you have a really great day. Enjoy this beautiful weather.
Yes, thank you so much.